built from China to Germany. Okay, because here we are trying to China is trying to build a high-speed railway. Okay, between Jakarta, which is the capital of Indonesia, and also the largest city in the country. Okay, Bandung actually is the third largest city in Indonesia, and both of the cities are in the Java Island. Okay. Now, the railway, okay, was first suggested by Japan back in 2008. So the Japanese government tried to promote the bullet train, okay, technology, and try to convince the Indonesian government that they should build a high-speed railway. Okay, and then back in 2014, suddenly China jumped in and tried to make a new proposal. Okay, so as a result of that, the Indonesian government has had two proposals in front of it, and then it can choose between these two. And eventually, China won the game. Okay, so Indonesian government accepted China's proposal. Okay, now let's try to see what China is proposing. Okay, and so the signing of the contract was in October 2015. So basically, shortly after, or maybe about a year after China submitted a proposal, China won the case. Okay, and what that is that well, the distance is a very short one. It's only 150 kilometers, which is not too long. Okay, and that is why some people argue that maybe the distance is not long enough, and it does not justify the building up of a high-speed railway. But you have to keep in mind that, well, this can be regarded as the first leg of a long high-speed railway from Jakarta to the second city. I forgot the English name of that city. 四水 3點水個四. That is the second largest city in Indonesia. So basically, the final plan is to complete the construction of the railway. Okay, but at least for this short part of the entire rail line, it would take about 3 years to complete. Okay, and the total investment would be 5.5 billion US dollars. Okay, well, that is in some sense not too much money using the standard of high-speed railway. Okay, but the good part, something that we should pay attention to is that such a high-speed railway would reduce the time to travel from one city to another from 3 hours to about 40 minutes. Okay, now that is a reduction of the time of transportation by about say 70%. Okay, 77%. Okay, so in that case, you can see the magic or the benefits that we can get from such a high-speed railway. Now, I will use some of the numbers here, to help us understand what the initiative may be in the future. Okay. Okay. Now there are two roads. Okay, land. Okay, and maritime. Now, land basically refers to the high-speed railway. Okay, because we want to move goods and people faster from China to Europe. Okay. Now, of course, for people, they can fly. Okay. But for goods, okay, it's not that easy to fly. Okay, especially if you are talking about some bulky things like machines, cars, and things like that. Okay. So you still have to rely on trains. Okay. And if that is the case, then of course you want to move the goods faster. Okay, and that is what the Land Silk Road is about. And basically, there are the upper route, okay, upper route, whatever, okay, and the middle one, and then the lower one, okay. And the exact line actually has not been fixed yet. So that would require further investigation, okay, later. So at least right now, this is the plan, okay. And another one, the Maritime Silk Road, refers to the construction of seaports, airports, and so on, okay. But one thing you may want to pay attention to is that, the Maritime Silk Road is not about time that much, okay. Now, when we look at land, we are talking about high-speed railway. High-speed railway would substantially reduce the time of travel, okay. But for the Maritime Silk Road, we are not talking too much about time because we are not going to have some high-speed ships or container ships from China to Europe. What we are talking about here in terms of the Maritime Silk Road is that we build seaports, okay, and airports, highways, and also these logistic facilities, and so on. So the purpose of the Maritime Silk Road is not to reduce the time, but to allow more countries to be involved. Okay. Now, I can give you an example. A very important point of the Maritime Silk Road is Colombo in Sri Lanka. Okay. Sri Lanka, you know where it is? It's just the eye drop of India. Okay. And now, if China buys oil from a Middle East country like Saudi Arabia, okay, now the ship would go straight from Middle East, and then through Singapore, and then go up to China. Okay. Now that ship probably would not have a stop in Sri Lanka, but now China is trying to build a modern seaport in Colombo, which is the capital of Sri Lanka. And after building up that seaport, then future ships from Middle East to China may have a stop there in Sri Lanka. Now, what is the impact of that? Well, that means that Sri Lanka will be involved in China's trade with Middle East or Europe and so on. And that, of course, would help Sri Lanka. And that would also help improve the economic relations between Sri Lanka and China, and also Sri Lanka and some of these European countries, Middle East countries, and so on. Okay, so the purpose or the major effect of the Maritime Silk Road is to connect all these ports, seaports, and countries together, so that they would have more trade, more interactions, and so on. Okay, so the direct effects of the Land Silk Road and the Maritime Silk Road actually are different. Okay. Okay, economic impacts. Okay, so try to talk about the economic impacts. Okay, now, why are we interested in knowing the economic impacts? Okay, so in order to convince these countries to join the initiative, you must convince these countries that they're going to benefit from the initiative. Otherwise, why would they be interested in being part of it? Okay, so you must convince them that this is a good thing for them. Now, probably that is not too difficult to convince them. The reason is that many of these countries actually are underdeveloped or developing, and they need a lot of foreign investment. They need a lot of infrastructure in order to improve the economy. They know all this, okay? And so probably we don't need too much to tell them, to convince them. But if we can identify the economic impact, exactly, how your economy may be able to benefit from the initiative, now I think that would make your argument even more convincing. Now, to make it even more and more convincing is if you can come up with some numbers, okay? So something like that, like this, okay? So suppose that the China's premier is going to convince one of these countries that, okay, now you should have a high-speed railway. And also I can tell you that, according to the estimate of my economist, okay, your economy is going to have your GDP increased by, say, 10%, or something like that, okay. Now, if you can come up with a number like that, and if that number is substantial enough, is big enough, then you would make your case even stronger, okay. So that is why we are interested in knowing the economic impacts of the initiative. Not just, it is the initiative. Now we want to know how that initiative may affect different countries, okay? Okay, now, the economic impacts actually depends on the stages of the initiative. So in different stages, because we would expect something different, and therefore the initiative may have different economic impacts, okay? Now let's go over the stages and see how each of these stages may affect the countries, okay? Okay, unfortunately here I can only offer some analytical framework, okay? So I can tell you that, how we can measure these impacts, okay? But unfortunately I don't have time to do the actual empirical estimation, okay? But at least maybe sometime in the future, or by me, by some other people, and so on, we can try to measure the figures, in terms of figures, numbers, okay, how different countries may be affected. Okay, now, we look at, again, that same diagram, but a slightly different one, because here I want to emphasize what may happen, okay, in finishing the initiative, okay. So here we are, so we are here, okay. And this is the time when the project starts, okay. But sometime before the project starts, the AIIB or China or whatever would have inject money into the economy. So the economy actually would feel the initiative sometime before the start of the initiative. Okay. So this is the injection of fund, and then after that, the construction would be somewhere here. Okay, and then after that, maybe 3 years later or even 5 years later, depending on the length of the railway, we would have the high-speed railway completed. And once we have that, then we would look at the trade, possibly trade, and some cultural exchanges, economic exchanges between that country and some neighboring countries as well. Okay, so that is the time the country would begin a new stage, and we would see some new economic impacts. Okay. Okay. Now, so let's begin with the case of the injection of investment fund. Okay. So the impact would be mainly on the local economy. So we send money to the economy, and then we try to build a high-speed railway. Now, in most cases, actually, China has mentioned that China, in building the high-speed railway, China would try to use local workers as much as possible. Okay. Now, if that is the case, then you would expect that, well, when the project starts, okay, then the employment situation in the local economy would be improved. Okay. Now, that, of course, is good for the economy. Now, in addition to that, the injection of money would mean what? some macroeconomic effects. Okay, so basically you have foreign money, and then that would increase the aggregate demand. Okay, and when you have more money, then you would create some multiplier effect. Okay, so the total impacts on the local economy may actually greater than the initial amount of the fund injected into the economy. Okay, now that would be quite important. Okay, okay. So these are the macroeconomic impacts. Okay, there's an estimate of the number of workers to be employed, but I don't have the number with me. Or here, maybe I can mention that actually I'm writing a paper on the One Belt, One Road initiative for volume on the Asian Pacific economies. Okay, so in case you are interested in this, you're welcome to send me an email. Then I can send you a copy of that paper when it is ready. Okay, and then that paper would have a lot of more examples and more numbers. Okay. Another possible impact is on the economic growth of the economy. Okay. Now, when we have the high-speed railway, say through Pakistan, okay, actually this is just a line of the train, okay, through the country. There may be 2 or 3 stops inside that particular country. But then for the economy, in particular, the long-term impacts, okay, you would expect that, only those neighboring areas close to a station would be affected, okay, more directly, okay. But that is not the end of the story, because once you have a high-speed train station there, obviously you want to build some connecting roads, some connecting train lines, and so on, okay. And therefore, that would call for more investment, at least in the areas close to a high-speed train station. Okay, so that push, in some sense, that would push the local government to invest more, either through borrowing money or through local raising of local money or whatever. Okay. Now, as a result of that, we would expect that the high-speed railway line actually could lead to further investment, and this further investment would improve the flow of resources within the economy. And we know that, if you increase the flexibility and the degree of freedom of movement of resources, then you are moving closer to something we call the production possibility frontier. That production possibility frontier, the PPF, shows the potential of production of the economy. And initially, you may be at a point quite below the PPF because, resources cannot move so freely, okay? So you don't have efficient allocation of resources. But now, through the high-speed train, through some local trains, through some local roads, and so on. So resources can move much freely, okay, much faster, much more easily within the economy. Now that would help the production point to move closer to the PPF. Okay. Now that is something we call the economic growth. Okay, and also, if we can have the improvement of the local economy, we can encourage people to get more education, to encourage the economy to have more physical capital accumulation, and so on. And maybe the local firms will be able to get some improvement in technology through technology transfer, through innovation, through imitation, and so on. Then we would expect that, now the economy has an improvement in its technology level, and that is one of the factors of economic growth. So that is why the initiative would have this kind of effect. Okay, and now we come to the last stage after the completion of the high-speed railways. So we have then the preferential trade treatment. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Okay. Now, what that means is that the high-speed railway actually is helping all the countries along the road in moving goods. Okay. So that, well, one of the countries, when trying to buy a car from Germany, then they can pay less. Okay. They can get the car faster. So that would encourage them to import more cars from Germany. So that is good for trade. Okay. But unfortunately, countries not along the land Silk Road would not be able to receive that kind of favorable treatment. Now, another example is Japan. Okay. They may buy a car from Japan as well, but unfortunately, Japan is not on the Silk Road. And as a result of that, if they continue to buy cars from Japan, they would not expect any reduction in the time, in the cost, and so on. Now, that is what we call preferential trade treatment. Okay. Now, that kind of treatment is the result of this land Silk Road and also maritime Silk Road as well, and that would affect the pattern of trade and also the volumes of trade for these countries. Okay, now, the Silk Road, well, generally would reduce the time, okay, of transportation, okay, and therefore that is good for trade between that country and some other countries, and that would improve trade, the volume of trade, and the effect of that is what we usually call trade creation, okay, so we have trade creation. And, but unfortunately, that would be against trade with countries like Japan or the US, okay, because they are not on the Silk Road, okay. Now, the Jakarta Bandung case that I just described actually shows that, well, when building up a high-speed railway can reduce the time for transportation by something like, say, 77%. Now, that is a lot, okay? Now, that is, of course, because we are having high-speed railway. So that is the meaning of high speed, okay? Okay, now, if that is the case, we can reduce the time for moving goods from Germany to China. Okay, now, because Japan and the US are not on the land Silk Road, and as a result of that, they would have some negative impacts in terms of the volume of trade between them and also some of these countries. Now, this is what we call trade diversion, okay? So trade, in some sense, is diverted from Japan to Germany. Germany is receiving that preferential trade treatment. Okay, now, the Maritime Silk Road actually may not have similar effects, but as I mentioned earlier, Maritime Silk Road actually is to help some of these countries more connected, okay? So as a result of that, maybe we can consider, again, the Sri Lanka case. Maybe initially, Sri Lanka may not have that kind of incentive in buying cars from Germany because, well, if they want to do that, they would have to order a certain number of cars from Germany directly. But now, because of the Maritime Silk Road, the ship from Europe going to China may have a stop in Sri Lanka. So as a result of that, Sri Lanka would feel that, well, the cost of getting cars from Germany is not that high. Maybe now I want to buy some cars from Germany. Okay. Now that is, of course, is a good thing for Germany. But on the other hand, Sri Lanka can also take advantage of this to sell goods to Germany. So goods can flow in both directions. Okay. So something we can therefore expect. Okay. Okay, now one example of trade creation and diversion, maybe something I have already mentioned. So China imports machines and also cars and so on from Germany, okay, and also from Japan. But unfortunately, the difference between Germany and Japan is that one is on the Silk Road and the other one is not. Okay, so right now, well, we do have train lines running from Germany to China, but now currently this line is very inefficient, and also because of the customs declaration and so on for the goods passing from one country to another is very clumsy, and it takes time, and therefore it was reported that to ship a car or a machine from Germany to China would take about 18 days. Okay, but suppose that well, we have connected the high-speed railway, and if we use the Jakarta Bandung case as an example, then we would expect that well, the time for moving the machine from Germany to China can be reduced to maybe 4 or 5 days. Now that is a huge improvement in terms of the time for transportation. Okay. Now, and also that would have a big impact on the volume of trade. So maybe, well, China now wants to buy more machines from Germany, but poor Japan, because Japan is not on the road. So in that case, China may shift some of its import from Japan to an import from Germany. Now this is what we call trade diversion. Okay, so in this case, we can have trade creation and trade diversion. Trade creation would be good for all those countries along the road, but trade diversion would be bad for some other countries. Okay. Okay, so well, trade creation and also trade diversion, something I just explained. Okay, and also we would expect that well, in general, trade creation would be good for all those countries, but trade diversion may be bad for some outside countries. Okay. Okay, now this kind of trade is what we call strategic trade. Okay, so in that case, in this case, Germany and Japan are competing in China's market. Okay, they want to get a market share as big as possible. So that is why we call this a kind of a strategic trade, because they are competing with each other. Okay, and so in terms of strategic trade, then we would expect that, well, it tends to benefit some local countries, the countries along the line, but it could be at the expense of some outside countries. Okay, so that is something we would expect. But in addition to that, we can have the pure import case. Okay, so in terms of China, okay, it is buying machines from Germany or from Japan. Okay, and now the Silk Road is helping some countries along the road, probably at the expense of some outside countries. So the question is, well, whether that is a good thing for China. Okay, now previously I argued that, well, that case may be good for Germany because Germany is receiving more business, more trade with China. Okay, but from China's point of view, is it a good idea to buy more cars or more machines from Germany